Today's fairy tale is about seductive fairies that will drain you dry and the love between sisters. It's called Crackernuts, and it's a Scottish tale. A king and a queen each have a daughter from a previous marriage. The king has a daughter named Kate, and the queen has a daughter named Anne. Now, Kate is prettier than Anne, and that just makes the queen really upset. Even though it doesn't upset the girls, Kate and Anne love each other like blood sisters. Queen goes to a henwife for help, and a henwife is a really cool character in folklore. Technically, it's a woman who keeps fowl, like chickens, but also a wise woman, a keeper of secrets, a witch. Henwife's like, yeah, I'll make this girl ugly, just send her to me tomorrow morning before she has anything to eat. So the queen does, but on her way out, Anne takes a crust of bread from the kitchen, munches it on her way, so the spell doesn't work. The next day they try again, but she finds some wild peas and eats those on her way. The third time the queen manages to get her there without her eating anything, and when the henwife asks her to lean over a pot, her head falls off, just falls off onto the floor, and then her head is replaced by the head of a sheep. The queen's like, thank you, henwife, works for me, and she goes home. But Kate has followed and found out what happened to her sister, so she takes her head and wraps it up in a cloth and keeps it, and they go off, basically deciding to go off on their own and seek their fortune and get away from their evil mom. They get to the castle of a king, and they find out the king has this one son who is wasting away, and no one knows why. The king has hired people to watch him at night, but those people are never heard from again. But he offers silver to Kate if she will stay the night and figure out what's wrong with his son, and she takes it. She's in the prince's room watching him sleep that night, and then suddenly at midnight he gets up, gets dressed, and leaves, so she follows him. He gets on a horse and rides away, but she manages to get on the horse behind him without him noticing and ride with him. As they ride, she plucks nuts from trees and fills her apron with them, which is going to be important later, and he still doesn't notice. They finally come to a green hill, and the prince jumps off the horse, and he says, open green hill and let this prince inside, and Kate, without him hearing, adds, and his lady Kate. The hill opens, and they enter this land of the fairies. It's a beautiful hall with amazing decorations, gorgeous fairies everywhere, and the prince goes off to dance with the fairies, and Kate hides. The fairies make the prince dance and dance and dance until he falls on the floor and can't do it anymore, and then they fan him until he can get up again, and they make him dance some more. Now, this idea of a fairyland where mortals go and have their life drained from them is very common in folklore. Since the Middle Ages, it's sometimes referred to as Venusberg, which means mountain of Venus in German. Some people think the prevalence of this idea in European folklore was meant to explain TB, or consumption, a wasting away sickness. It's the fairies making them dance. When the cock crows, it's time for the prince to get back, and so Kate sneaks on the horse again. They go back. We can assume that the people who disappeared before maybe got lost in the fairy realm, but she doesn't. She sneaks back fast, and when they come in expecting to find her gone or dead, she's sitting in front of the fire cracking the nuts she got on her trip. Kate Crackernuts. She doesn't tell them what happened. She's like, he had a good night, and I'll watch him again tonight for gold instead of silver this time. And they're like, okay. The second night, she follows him again and gathers nuts again, but this time she doesn't watch him because she knows he's just gonna dance all night, and instead she wanders off and finds a fairy baby. She sees this baby playing with a magic wand, and she hears other fairies who apparently know all her business saying, wow, if Katie had that wand, she could just make her sister beautiful again without a sheep head. Kate's like, well, that's cool knowledge, and so she takes the nuts from her apron and rolls them and distracts the baby, and when the baby toddles after the nuts, she takes the wand. They get home the next morning. She rushes to Anne's room, touches her sheep head 3 times with the wand, and the sheep head falls off. The story just says Anne was her own beautiful self again. It doesn't say they put her old head back on her, so I don't really know what they do with the old head. Maybe just toss it? It's probably not doing too good by then. The third night, Kate says, I'm not gonna go watch the prince again unless I get to marry him if I succeed. They say yes. She follows the prince again, and this time, that same baby fairy is playing with a bird, assuming a live bird. Kate hears the fairy say, man, if the prince were to ever eat 3 bites of that bird, he'd be totally well again. So Kate distracts the baby with the nuts again. She gets the bird, she brings it home, either kills it then or kills it when she gets home, but she plucks the feathers and she cooks it. She brings it into the prince's room, and apparently it smells so good that he wakes up and says, oh my god, if only I could have a bite of that bird. So they really draw this out. She gives him 1 bite and he sits up on his elbow. She gives him another bite and he sits up on the bed. He says, oh, that I had a 3rd bite. She gives him a 3rd bite and he rose up hale and strong. And it says when the people of the palace came in, they saw him and Katie sitting by the fire cracking nuts together. Feels a little bit like an innuendo. Maybe not. Meanwhile, the prince's brother, if you remember he had one, he just wasn't, going to the fairy parties. He has seen Anne with her normal head, not the sheep one, and is totally in love with her. So that prince marries Anne, this prince marries Kate, and then they all live happily ever after. Or as the story says, the sick son married the well son married the sick sister, and all lived happy and died happy, and never drank out of a dry cappy. Very Scottish ending. As always, check out my book, Dust Spells, a reimagining of the 12 Dancing Princesses, which this story is kind of a reverse of. In that one, a man stays overnight because these girls are going to a fairyland and wasting away, well, at least wasting their shoes away. My version's in the Dust Bowl with ghosts and moonshine and the devil. And my podcast, all the links are in the bio. Do you want to be in a TikTok? Is that what you got up here?